YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. Today's video is going to be a bit different than what you may be used to. I'm going to be dividing it up into two parts. The first section is going to cover a pretty interesting topic. I got curious about LS swaps recently, and upon diving into the rabbit hole, I wanted to cover some of what I consider to be the most interesting vehicles that are powered by Corvette spec V8s. The second part of the video is going to talk about some changes to the channel, including some of the changes to the schedule for the videos that I make. It should be a really fun and interesting video, so let's get right into it. Up first is the world of engine swaps. Specifically, I fell into an internet rabbit hole on engines, and specifically the engines in Corvettes. Now, if you're like me, when you're talking with your car buddies about cars you like, things you'd love to have a chance to drive, inevitably you get into those conversations of, if price was no object, but also fun or weird cars on a budget. This inevitably will pretty quickly lead you into the realm of engine swaps, frequently called LS swaps due to the LS designation on a series of engines from GM. LS swapped Minis, ice cream trucks, and Porsches quickly become the topic of conversation whenever you toss out a prompt of a limited budget and you want a car that can scare you. I didn't actually know a lot about LS swaps other than the high-level basics of pull out the stock engine and drop in a GM powertrain, so I wanted to do a little homework. For those who, like me, aren't familiar, let me provide a little bit of history. The first piece of the puzzle was way back in 1997, and that's when Chevy started producing LS engines. They're powerful, reliable, and relatively simple engines to use for a variety of applications. With standardized external dimensions and a large number of them made, you can find an LS, whether used or new, for fairly low prices. The second piece of the puzzle was the advent of LS kits for many popular platforms. Straightforward kits that let you mount and fully connect an LS engine into almost any platform or chassis under the sun. These kits act as mounts and adapters to not just mount the engine, but connect oil pans, serpentine belts, radiators, transmissions, fuel pumps, and the full electrical harnesses. The last piece of this puzzle is the proliferation of guides, tutorials, and especially YouTube guides on how to put an LS into almost anything. Want to put an LS in your old hot rod car? Easy. Want to turn a minivan into a drag racer? Just follow these directions. Have an idea for a car that no one's ever swapped? Chances are it's already been done, and there's video guides on how to do it. I'm exaggerating a little, but it really has become the go-to for moderately mechanically inclined people to dramatically improve the power and performance of a platform they love for relatively short money. A quick skim of eBay for LS3s, for example, shows you can pick up used ones for about $5,000 to $6,000 and a brand new crate motor for about $12,000. Price per horsepower, there likely isn't a better performance boost for a car than you can do with an LS swap, which is ultimately the reason these have become so enticing. Anyway, without diving into every little detail, this gives you the general idea of what LS swaps are and specifically why they've become so prevalent. Now, in the course of my looking on LS swaps, I started to get curious about what kinds of things people have swapped those engines into and what vehicles come equipped with Corvette engines direct from the factory. I decided to break this up a bit into three interesting platforms. The most unexpected platform, the most sacrilegious platform, but awesome, and the best bang for the buck. Now, a quick note to set the stage. Since the LS line was introduced, there have been a number of different models of LS engines, starting with the LS1, then the LS6, the LS2, LS3, and perhaps most interesting, the LS7, and even a supercharged LS9. GM, for their part, has led the charge of LS-ifying as much as they can, with nearly a version of every type of vehicle at one point or another having an LS V8 in it. From cars you'd expect, like the Impalas and the SSs of the world, to SUVs like the Trailblazer SS, all the way to slightly weird things like the Buick Roadmaster wagon and the short-lived Saab SUVs. GM has always visibly wondered, what if? So even from the factory, there's been a bit of, what if we LS swap this at GM? Up first is an example of a Corvette engine in something completely unexpected that comes in the form of a helicopter. We have the 1992 Vertical Aviation brand's Hummingbird helicopter. This helicopter featured two different power plant options, and one of those was an LS7 V8, which you may know is the same engine which powered the C6 Z06. This is a kit helicopter which can carry 4 people and can carry a cargo of 950 pounds. It can cruise at 100 miles an hour and travel 375 miles on one full tank of gas, which is 57 gallons. This equates to about 6.6 miles per gallon. Not the best fuel economy. Interestingly, this specific helicopter is based on a modified Sikorsky S-52 chassis, which first flew way back in 1947, meaning that this helicopter design has been around in one form or another for 76 years. Beyond that, though, there are several things that really stand out here. First, look at the angle of the engine in the chassis. This is only made possible because of the dry sump oiling system. Next, the LS7 was detuned down to producing only about 280 horsepower at roughly 2,800 to 3,000 RPM. Very different from the 505 horsepower and 6,300 RPM redline of the Corvette-mounted LS7. Part of the appeal of this is that helicopters require a constant speed for their engine, and movement is based on changes in rotor pitch rather than speeding up or slowing down the engine. So in this application, the LS7 just loafs along at a relatively low but torquey RPM, well below what it can potentially run. This carries another benefit too. The LS7 here has a recommended time before overhaul, TBO, of 3,000 hours. For the math inclined, if you flew every day for 8 hours per day, it would take over a year, 375 days to be exact, to reach that threshold. Two other big benefits here revolve around price. The engine itself, compared to other similar output aircraft engines, is significantly less expensive. And then separately, it can run on standard 87-octane gasoline versus many aircraft-specific engines which require 100-octane low lead, which right now is about $6.70 a gallon, more than double the price for 87. Anyway, I thought this was a particularly interesting use of an LS, as well as a novel orientation within the platform itself. Up next is either one of the most sacrilegious or genius swaps, depending on how you look at it. A 1995 Lamborghini Diablo, which was listed for sale on Craigslist and has an LS3 V8 swapped into it. This car started out as a regular Lamborghini Diablo, which, as older Lamborghinis are prone to do, caught fire and then became a write-off. The owner of the car bought this as a project car and decided that they wanted the power of the V12, but better reliability and all-day drivability and less cost of ownership. So they did what few of us would be brave enough to do and swapped in an LS3. The engine that they chose was then modified and uprated to 550 horsepower to actually improve on the 485 horsepower that the car originally had. This was a passion project for the owner, taking roughly 8 years of work on and off to complete, but ultimately that effort paid off. The LS3 is mated to a manual transmission from a Porsche 911, complete with a limited slip differential. The car was also lightened quite a bit as it was converted from all-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive. Before selling the car, the owner notes that they drove the car on a road trip from Nevada to Colorado and back, and that the car was comfortable and easy to drive. The car can average 23.8 miles per gallon on highway too, so the relative lightweight and aerodynamics of the car can melt away those miles. All said and done, the car sold for about $105,000, right around the price of a base C8 Z06. Now, while it may have frightened the Lamborghini purists of the world, giving second life to a fire-damaged icon like the Diablo, I think, is a pretty worthy endeavor, and I think the LS was up to the task. And in what is likely to be the best bang for the buck, I give you the LS3-powered ND Miata. If you've been interested in cars for a while, or cruised around the internet looking for V8 power, you've likely heard of a small Colorado-based company called Flyin Miata. Known as a one-stop shop for all things Miata, as well as many other platforms, they became one of the first to put an LS in earlier generation Miatas. But more impressively, they were also the first to put an LS3 in the ND, or the latest Miata. I recommend doing a search on YouTube for Flyin Miata V8 so you can hear the cars run. They sound amazing. Now, starting out as a test car for the company, they figured out that with not much room to spare, the LS3 could just fit under the hood. First, the numbers. 525 horsepower in a car with a curb weight of 2,600 pounds. The transmission is a Tremec T56 Magnum with a GM limited slip differential. Despite the relatively bonkers power-to-weight ratio, the car isn't just an engine strapped to a small car. Flyin Miata went through the entire car to build it up to match the power plant. Better cooling, reinforced engine mounts and chassis braces, wider tires, stronger and better damped suspension, reworked electronics from the ground up. The ultimate goal was to make a Miata that's pushing more than double the stock 181 horsepower while being well balanced, easy to drive, and it looks completely stock from the outside. A fun challenge they ran into though is with the exhaust. From the headers, the exhaust runs straight back with valves that can divert into large mufflers. With the valves closed, the car is relatively quiet, mild-mannered, and other than the center-mounted exhaust, doesn't even draw attention. However, with the valves open though, the car is essentially straight-piped and snaps necks everywhere. Well, Flyin Miata ran into a problem with this. In pursuit of keeping the car looking stock, they didn't want to add aftermarket switches in the cockpit, but they did want you to be able to open and close those valves at will. So what did they do? They repurposed two of the windshield wiper settings on the wiper stock for opening and closing the valves. Pretty awesome solution. One other piece I find pretty interesting is the electronics package. The car actually runs both a GM ECU and a Mazda ECU with the Flyin Miata electronic interface between them. This interface essentially acts as a translator between the two, allowing the Mazda ECU to tell the GM ECU what to do. They spent hundreds of hours mapping out all the signals from Mazda, then doing the same with the GM ECU. Then they modified, tweaked, and in some cases removed outputs until they had a perfect mesh between the two, allowing all the stock controls and components in the Miata to be used to interface with and leverage the LS3. The result here is one of the most impressive as well as professional conversions I was able to find. A few performance stats on the car. 0 to 60 is 3.5 seconds, traction limited of course. 0 to 150 is 18.7 seconds. Though it hasn't been tested, the top speed will occur at the top of 5th gear, just crossing 200 miles an hour, while cruising speed on a highway will net you around 30 miles per gallon due to a very tall 6th gear. These specific cars are fairly rare, despite having been available from 2016 until around late 2019, with numbers in the dozens rather than the hundreds or the thousands. While you'd need to supply the donor car, buy the LS, and the conversion kit, these are really good bang for the buck. Once the program ended, Flyin Miata sold off their company LS3 ND Miatas, with the original car fetching just over $100,000 on Bring a Trailer fairly recently. One interesting stat is that the original car, the one that I've got pictured here, which was the original and first car, is the test bed for the platform and for the program, was heavily used, beaten on by the media, used in countless track days, and drove multiple times full cross-country road trips. The car only broke one part in its 4 years with the company, the power steering pump, which was easily replaced at a Chevy dealership same day. The older I get, the more I realize I care less about outright power and more about fun and uniqueness. Finding cars that speak to me. These are one of those types of cars. Something a bit off the beaten path, something special. Definitely learning about LS swaps has given me a couple ideas for projects I could do once I build my new garage. Really cool stuff. And now on to the second part of my video, some changes to my channel. While change can be a bit of an unknown, those that have stuck with me will hopefully realize that these changes are likely to improve and grow my channel. Coming into 2023, my channel has persevered quite well. For the last 2 3/4 years, I've released a new video every Friday without fail. That's about 143 videos covering a wide range of topics. As I've alluded to in the past though, time is my most precious thing. Between a very busy full-time career in the tech world, a busy personal life with lots of travel, hobbies, interests, and time with my family, as well as a YouTube channel to run and film every single week, I find that I'm always at a loss for time. Frequently, this means I don't get a chance to respond to comments, I don't have time to respond to emails, and most worryingly, to me at least, is that I don't have as much time to polish and improve on my videos as I'd like to on the channel. Starting with this video, I'm going to try changing things up a little bit. I'm moving to an every other week format, so roughly 2 videos per month instead of 4. My primary motivator here though is quality. I'd like to have a bit more time with each video to better polish it, make them a little longer, and to cover a wider range of topics, car related of course. The balance to this is that I will periodically be releasing out of band videos, which will fall between my videos every 2 weeks, which will dive into various other subjects in the car world. For example, myself and 4 friends are starting a 24-hour of Lemons race team this year, with the hopes of competing this summer. I'm going to be doing some other interesting events this year, including autocross and other track-related activities. I'm also actively looking for my first few opportunities to try out a C8 Z06 and share my own deep dive review. I'm also looking seriously at building my ultimate dream garage for storing several more fun cars, and freeing me up to buy a few more fun things, as well as move all of my YouTube filming into that. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm planning to set up a subscriber group drive for anyone in New England this summer, so hopefully I can meet a group of you and we can go for a drive on some amazing roads and get some good food. With so much going on, time in those areas I think will really pay off for the channel, my content, and ultimately you, the viewer. Since fall of 2021, I hadn't materially changed much on the channel, and I'd like to significantly grow and branch out a bit more than just Corvette content. As I mentioned in an earlier survey, a lot of you reached out supporting the idea of me covering other topics in the car world. And I want to bring all of you along for the ride. As a car enthusiast, first and foremost, I feel that nothing worth doing is going to be easy, and that life is about taking risks. One of those is making some changes, even though things are pretty comfortable right now. The last piece of this is that I'd love for you to send me your suggestions, your ideas, and even just plain feedback. Let me know what works. Let me know what doesn't. Share your thoughts, both in the comments and feel free to email me at fredsfullthrottle@gmail.com. I will try my best to respond, but I may not be able to for everyone. I will, however, assure you that I read every single word written, so know that I'm listening. I hope this sounds interesting, and I appreciate you sticking with me and playing a role in helping the channel grow. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, Fred out!